Shalom and welcome to Practical Spirituality here in Asia Torah in the old city of Jerusalem overlooking the Western Wall. Today the question at hand is where do we get the word Orthodox from? And the answer is, well, not from the Jews, because the word Orthodox means literally strict, and Jews who keep Judaism are rarely strict. They're actually probably more on the lenient side. And the only thing that observant Jews do is they align themselves with their tribal heritage. And the tribal heritage of Jews includes all kinds of details, which includes Shabbat and kosher and blessings and all that stuff. That does not make them strict. They may actually be the most chilled out people you've ever met. So don't call them Orthodox. So then where did the name Orthodox come from? The answer is it came from those that stopped keeping Judaism. Now, when you stop keeping Judaism, what you're doing now is you're living inorganically. You have basically betrayed your people, and you have gone against the traditions of 3,300, and if it's 2020, 3,331 years of Jews keeping the tradition. And you're obviously a grandson or a granddaughter or a great-grandson or great-granddaughter of someone who did actually, risk their life and limb to keep it and made all the necessary sacrifices for something they found was beautiful. And the fact that you're not interested in it, which is probably because you've been fed some kind of left-wing millennial, patriarchy, like hierarchy scrap, without the S. Just a rabbi, so I say scrap. And so you've gotten angry at the hierarchy. Of course, if you needed a surgery, you like the hierarchy because you're going to choose the best surgeon, but let's not discuss surgeries. But you somehow hate hierarchies, and therefore you're going to have to just break down all distinctions, including right and wrong, Jew and Gentile, and everything will be just okay until eventually you're not sure if you're a boy or a girl. Now, the word Orthodox was created by those who stopped keeping Judaism. Now, by the way, you may think I'm judging them. I'm not judging them. Either you were raised not keeping Judaism, or you got turned off, or you had a weird Uncle Yankee who couldn't keep his hands to themselves, and so your Judaism got poisoned, but something went wrong, and so there's no blame at all. Something went wrong. But the fact is that now that you got your device that can Google anything and get all the fat on reality here, and you can and should investigate the truth. And slowly but surely align your life. It'll probably take a few years, but you can slowly but surely align your life with Judaism and live Jewish life. That does not make you Orthodox. You could be the most chill person in the world and still be keeping Judaism. All it makes you is aligned. All it makes you is you're amongst the faithful to our tradition. That's all. You're just faithful to it. You're not Orthodox. But they called us Orthodox. Why? Well, think about it. If you betray the tradition, you feel horribly guilty. And now, what do you have? You always have in your face the people who make you feel terribly guilty, i.e. people who look like me. Yeah? So, I can't help but make Jews feel like they're somehow, not the ones who are observant, because they know I'm just part of some cult called Hasidism. But the ones who are secular see a guy like me, and they just immediately feel uncircumcised. And so after a trip to the bathroom in the airport lobby and realizing they are circumcised, they then come out and usually bagel me. Right there in the lobby, I get bagel. You know what bageling is? Bageling is when you're a secular Jew, feeling a little bad about it, especially in the presence of a Jew who's clearly observant, and you say something Jewish to them. Like, shalom. At which point, we know we're getting bageled when we're getting bageled. So we're just like, shalom, how are you? Yeah. I've had people bagel me in the funniest ways, and it's great. I'm happy to get bageled. I had a guy cross the street once in some random town, across the street, and comes up to me. I mean, this guy for sure didn't care when Shabbos comes in, but he comes up to me and he says, "So when does Shabbos come in this week?" And I'm like, "I have no idea." But I'm so happy you asked. I got burned plenty of incense, but I'm not even sure my battery is still burning incense.
An electronic incense burner?
Yeah. There's a little bit coming out. I don't think that's what I need right now. Yo, what's up, Vinci?
Can I ask a question?
You can ask.
How does one know at what pace one should grow without going too much that will crash, go too little, then you're not fulfilling your potential?
That's a good question.
Great question.
You guys like that question? Yeah, I really like that question. Not sure I like that question. It's pretty good. What's interesting is that people who feel self-conscious about their secularness when in the presence of an observant Jew, they don't realize that the observant Jew's feeling self-conscious because he's feeling like he's got to somehow apologize for his observance in the modern world. And that is so lame. That is so lame. You don't apologize for nothing. Yeah, you're holding on to a rope that, usually if you're holding on to a rope like in a gym, it's hooked up to the ceiling. This rope goes straight through the ceiling and goes all the way to Hashem. It's Jacob's ladder in rope form. It's going back thousands of years. It is the key to your stability. It's your ticket out of any midlife crisis, that's for sure. You don't have to have an affair or buy a Harley. You're connected to all reality. And so the fact that when you turn mid-40s, you start looking at your life and saying, this is not my house, this is not my wife, this is not my kids. How did I get here? And then your whole life just goes in a total tailspin. None of you know what I'm talking about yet, but when you're young like you guys, you're like a question mark right now. You're like Gumby. You're just this human question mark. Like, where am I going to live? Who am I going to marry? What's going to be my profession? How is my life going to go? What city will I live in? If you're female, what's going to be my last name? It's just question marks everywhere. And then what happens in your 20s is 20s to 30 is you make exclamation points out of everything. You're like, this is who I'm going to marry, and this is going to be my profession, and this is what's going to be my last name, and this is what's going to be this, and this is what's going to be that, and this is the city I'm living in, and this is going to be... you make all these exclamation points. They're just boom, you just straighten out the question mark. But God has a funny sense of humor. And what he does, there's a standing spot right over there. We're doing standing room only, right in the corner. Can you slide up a teeny bit by the window? Thank you. Just give her the standing spot behind you. Slide up a little.
Do you want to hear it?
No, don't be nice, please. That'll be very disruptive. Yeah. Also, these SEM girls don't talk to boys. So, anyway.
I can stay with them.
Yeah. Anyway, do you think we should start having separate seating? Or should we just call a spade a spade? Were either of you guys raised observant? We took a poll earlier. Were you raised observant? Were you raised observant? So we got out of about 45 people in here, we have 3 that were not raised observant. So they're over there, and maybe we should just start separate seating. How about a mechitza? Anyway, how many would have come if this were going on in town? Okay, this is a good poll. How many are coming because you were coming to the Aish Cinemaplex? But if the Cinemaplex was going on, I don't know, in town, like near the Shuk, Ben Yehuda, anywhere, Geula. If this Cinemaplex took place in town, would you have come just as much? Okay. Now I'm taking it that everyone else is here because you wanted to come to the old city and come to Aish. Is that right? Okay. Just my little poll. pulls over. Anyway, but you find a lot of observant Jews feel self-conscious, you know, in front of secular Jews, and that's just lame, and you should be so proud. Now, a lot of you look pretty modern, but this really runs rampant in the Hasidic world, where you look backwards. You just look backwards, and you look like you're from some painting, or like I was talking about before, you're in some Judaica museum. You know, and I went to a Judaica museum. It's in LA. It's called, anyone from LA here? It's called the, up near Mulholland Drive. I can't remember its name. But anyway, it was in those days, $7 million museum. The day they opened it was the day that the Orthodox community, who was not yet rich, now it's like Hancock Park's like big time. But it was the day that the Orthodox community had no more money to serve hot food to the kids in the schools. The day they opened the $7 million museum about Judaism, which is every single picture was someone who looked like me in the museum. You know, it was all about the shtetls and everything. But what is all that? It's the same as bageling. It's secular Jewries dealing with their guilt. And in fact, Hollywood made a whole genre about this. One of the most famous of the first of them all was Fiddler on the Roof, where an absolute ignoramus with a bunch of daughters watches his family assimilate. You know, and just like, you know, tradition. He's saying tradition, but the character they put was not a Torah scholar. He was an idiot. And named Tevye, who, like, you know, didn't know his knee from his elbow. But then there was movie after movie after movie. There's one of the more famous ones in motion picture was something called The Jazz Singer, where the final scene has the jazz singer, looks kind of like you, jazz singer. He's up there. It's who's the famous singer that it was? Neil Diamond. You know, he's up there singing. What's a famous Neil Diamond song? Anyone know? I don't know. He's not much. Now that's Bruce Springsteen. Anyway, he's singing his song, and in like, I don't know if you saw The Jazz Singer, you probably did. Anyway, but there in the 10th row is his father in a long coat, just like the one I wear, and a black hat with a long white beard, like this, laughing with it, meaning the whole movie was the war of him saying, I need to live my American dream, and the father saying, no, you must live in the dark ages. And then the father comes around. And there was movie after movie after movie made up like this. And also many Jewish writers had to put in, you know, little Yiddish references in their films that are just little ways of saying I'm Jewish. They're bagling out of their movies. You know, even in Mel Brooks's Blazing Saddles, which was a Western, you know, you have at one point there's a whole wagon, what do you call it? A lineup of wagons, caravan of wagon, where these black slaves are moving across the plains of America in their wagons, and what happened was a group of bandit Indians come, you know, with the feather and the headdresses, and they're chasing out. They're going to go rob the wagons. Of course, there's nothing in the wagons. It's black people who were slaves, and so when they get to the wagon, they stop the wagons to rob them. And the head chief Indian, who's actually Mel Brooks dressed up like an Indian, he looks at the Indians and he says, Schwarzes, he darker than us. Let them gain. Which means black people, they're darker than us. And then in Yiddish, for a Hollywood film, that's a slapstick Western, he says in Yiddish, listen, which means let them go. And they let them go. But like, no, of the millions of people watch that movie, they had no idea what that was supposed to mean. But they'll just slide it in there to feel better about themselves. And so that's where the word Orthodox came from. It was a way of basically saying that they're strict and we're normal. But that's not the case. Let's flip it to reality here. We're normal in that we're keeping our tribal traditions. I'll give you an example of like where it really is. You see the irony and the hypocrisy. A real irony is that there are a lot of Jews on the board of National Geographic and various other things that help tribes in the Amazon. And one of the things they do is people who live in the Amazon, when they get wind that there's like cities around, there's like, gosh, what are the names of cities in Brazil?
Rio de Janeiro.
That's in Sao Paulo. Rio de Janeiro is in Argentina, I think, or is that Buenos Aires? What's in Colombia? The main city, Bogota. So when the tribes realize there's like a whole other world out there, so some of them actually go and assimilate into the streets of Rio de Janeiro, and there's actually bodies. They're Kirov efforts. There's bodies of meaning there's organizations that try to get them back to the jungle, to their people, because now they're already like strung out on crack and selling themselves in the night to just to get by in these cities, and like, no, go back to the jungle. So National Geographic, with Jews on their board, will actually do whole articles on them and whole efforts to like be true to your tribe, man. Like, life's not better in the city. Get back to your people. But meanwhile, you understand, these same Jews are like, yeah, they should get back to their tribe, but we should just enjoy our SUV drive to Costco. So anyway, if you want to use the word, there's 2 words to get out of your vocabulary. That was Orthodox. Here's the second one. Part 2, religion. Religion. Judaism is not a religion. And so you should probably, just like you should knock Orthodox out of your vocabulary, you should knock the word religious out of your vocabulary. Because when you use the word religious or word of a religion, so what that connotates is that there are all these religions, which are all just different narratives of people throughout history, and there's all these religions, and we're one of them. We're just one of the religions. And anyone been to the synagogue in JFK? You ever been to that synagogue in JFK? So you're walking by, and it's like there's all the chapels, and here's the Greek Orthodox, and there's this one. And they're just they're all empty. Never seen anyone in any of them except for the Jewish one. But there's the Hindu one, and then this one, and then the last one in the corner is the Jewish one, which actually has people in it who are usually praying or learning or whatever. But you understand, it just like we're part of a lineup of conflicting narratives of people over history. And we're like, just like they have a random narrative, we have a random narrative. We're all the same. We're all just part of these random narratives. And that's what happens when you use the word that you're religious, or you use the word religion around the word Judaism. So you want to get those out of your vocabulary. You're not religious, and you're not part of a religion. Because if you're part of religion, so then thank God you were born into your home, because had you been born in Iran, you would have been, what is Iran, Sunni or Shiite? Shiite. If you had been born in Iran, you'd be Shiite. And if you were born in Syria, what's Syria? Probably the same.
Probably Sunni.
No, I think they're also Shiite. That's why they're so friendly. If you're born in Saudi Arabia, you're Sunni. And if you were born in Rome, you'd be whatever they are. Are they, I don't know, some form of Christianity. I'm sorry to not know much about it. And you understand that most people are just victims of their upbringing. And you may be too. But at least Judaism, you can hold up to a microscope and test it. You can actually test it and see what's really there, which is unique. It's unique. It stands up. Like we got random stuff in there. Like, for example, oh gosh, I can't exactly look this up right now with my phone doing the live feed. What was that number? You know what? Hold on one second. Say hi, everybody. Hi.
Hey, Zach.
You're not on anymore. I'm just doing the. Oh, great. I looked up Purim. I guess I should have looked up Megillah. I got a list of booze that I had to buy. 12,101. Okay. It's just such a crazy one. Okay, going back to our live feed. How do I do that? Here we go. Hi, sorry about that. What did I say, 12,111? So, 12,111. 12,111. Yeah? So check this out. When you look in the Megillah was written, 2,500 years ago, whereas our Torah is 3,300 years. And the Megillah was written 2,500 years ago. And something amazing about the Megillah is that the word Amalek in our Torah is who is Haman's from the tribe of Amalek, and he's out to destroy the Jewish people. And if you look at the word Amalek in equidistant skips, it should be, meaning if you go like skip letters, skip 100 letters. So you have ayin, skip 100 letters, mem. I'll show you what those letters look like. So if you have a skip here of 50, 100 letters, and then a mem and 100 letters. I mean, if you just look for how it's coded with equidistant skips. So like 100, 100, 100. So whatever, if you look for the skips, you would find, obviously, it's only 4 letters. So you should find tons of Amaleks throughout the Torah because it's only 4 letters. And obviously, it's going to hit the equidistant skips quite a bit. So you should find it. And also, any book you translate to Hebrew, you should find Amalek a lot. When you want to know something interesting, if you translated the encyclopedia into Hebrew and then look for how many times Amalek's encoded in there in equidistant skips between letters, you'd find tons of them because it's only 4 letters and they're fairly common letters. So you'd find tons of them. Well, guess what? In our Torah, it's the weirdest thing, but the equidistant skip is 1,111 letters from the Ayin to get to the Mem, then another 12,111 to get to the Lamed, and another 12,111 to get to the Kuf. It's like, it's a giant scam. It shouldn't be that way. And also something else really interesting is what Ayin is it? The word Amalek. The word Amalek, when it's talking about the descendants of Esau, there's a mention of Amalek there in Genesis. And then you got all the letter skips. Big skip. And no shorter skips, which is weird. And guess what the Kuf is at the very end of the Torah, where you get the last skip. Guess where the Kuf is?
Amalek?
It's the Kuf of the word Amalek, which is really bizarre. Not only that, but Mordechai's hinted at when in the book of Exodus, when they're talking about the spices in the temple, and it's called Mordror, which sounds like Mordechai. And the same thing. His name comes out, Mordechai comes out in a skip of 12,111. And the same thing happens with the word Hadassah for Esther. Esther's name was Hadassah. And it's also that skip. It's just bizarre. But here's the coolest part, is that the Megillat Esther has 12,111 letters in it. The entire book has 12,111 letters inside of it. And here's this, it's encoded right there under Amalek inside the Chumash. Now you might say, well, you could probably pull that off, like if you're a master of Torah, somehow you encode it like that, and then you write a Megillah and make sure it has 12,111 letters. Possible that it could be done that way, and get Mordechai in there and Esther in there and have the whole thing weaving like that. Of course, who in the world would ever know? And the fact that we know is just because there was some miraculous rabbi who figured all that out. But then you still wouldn't have an explanation for why Haman, who is the sinister, evil, bad guy in the Purim story, when it talks about his 10 sons being hung and one suicide, which was his daughter, you still wouldn't have, after they were killed by the sword and then hung, Esther said to hang them the following day. There's no way a human being could have known that 2,500 years later, that the Nuremberg trials, that you'd have 11 Nazis, 1 commits suicide and 10 are hung. And in the actual names listed in the Torah is that year, 5707, is actually listed in meaning the names of Haman's kids. The first name, Parshandasa, has a small taf, and the Parmashta has a small shin. And Vaizasa, the last name, has a small zayin, which spells out, right, Taf Shin Zayin, which was the year of the Nuremberg trials. And so, like, yeah, you might have been raised into the narrative of Judaism, but you can see through various, and I'm only mentioning 2, and there's all kinds of wild stuff of how you can verify it. And on top of that, we ourselves are recognized amongst the world's tribes as a tribe. We're seen as a tribe. And we're not seen as a religion. And I even just recently, I speak on behalf of our tribe. I've been somehow recognized as a spokesman for our tribe. And when the tribes of the world get together, mostly for preservation of the rainforests and stuff, and just educating the world on their cultures, I'm asked to speak on behalf of ours. And I've asked them, each time I'm asked to speak, I ask them, are you going to have any religions there? And every time I get a text back from the organizer and saying, no, it's only tribes. They will not allow religions to be represented. There are no man-made narratives allowed here. And it's always like, don't worry, Rabbi. We know what Judaism is. And I've spoken to some of these. I get to meet the tribal leaders, and I've spoken to some of them. They're like, yeah. When they meet me, they're just like, whoa. Why? They said, because not only do we have the tribal background that they have, but they say that our tribes, we don't have prophecy. Your tribe's purely prophetically based. Our tribes, yeah, they're built on our understandings of the Kabbalistic universe and the parallel realms, and they know this stuff. They know all about the parallel realms, and they know these things. And as much as a revelation they get would only be on some plant medicine like mescaline or ayahuasca or one of these jungle medicines they take that teach them. You know, these plant medicines are plant teachers. And they've taught tribal leaders for thousands of years the secrets of creation, these medicines. But when they come to us, they're just like, whoa, you know, because plant medicines are not prophecy. Prophecy is way beyond plant medicines. You know, prophecy makes LSD look like vitamin C. It's a totally different realm. You know, you could go do their plant medicines, you still come back normal the next day. Prophecy, you'd be putting your soup into your forehead. You know, you'd be brushing your teeth by your ear. You know, you'd never get back to yourself. You'd never be able to come back from prophecy, and that's why it took so much to finally get prophecy. Like, meaning if you were living in the times of prophets, it took so much alignments and so much personal work and so much cleaning out of ego until you got. It's funny that people who go for Eastern traditions. You know, if you look at Jacob's ladder, you know, if that's the ladder, you're climbing up this spiritual ladder. So in Eastern traditions, the top of the ladder is enlightenment, and the word enlightenment, or the I guess the Hindu word for it would be Buddha. Buddha means the enlightened one. So that's the top. That's the goal, like to become enlightened. What does it mean, enlightened? It means you're no longer selfishly involved. You know, so like, meaning when someone steps on your foot on an Egged bus, you know, and he's still on it, so you'd be like, can you get off our foot? You know, there's no you. It's just like, can you get off our foot? So that level, you know where that is? That's right in the middle of Jacob's ladder, enlightenment. And the top of the ladder is prophecy. Jews spell prophecy with an F. Prophecy. So, and that's prophecy, is the top of the ladder. There's other levels. There's Ruach HaKodesh. That's like what Rashi had. Prophet enlightenment's just like it's a hechsher mitzvah. You know, it's a how do you say that? It's a requisite to go higher on the ladder is to get to selflessness. You know, and that's just a big part of our work, and that's why we have Musar Sfarim, is to kind of knock the ego out of you and go to the Musar program. I actually run a seminar that's actually coming up this week. I have flyers. Perfect time for a plug. Possibly a seminar. So I actually run a seminar that basically where you take your actual personal narrative about your whole life just becomes uninteresting. It's not even something you defend anymore. Like suddenly you can walk into a wedding and just be totally relaxed and be yourself in public and stuff. And the way you deal with business people, you know, I just met a businessman who's asking me what I think about his partnership. And I was just like, he said, got a partner. And I'm like, well, it's a terrible partnership. And he's like, what do you mean? And I'm like, you just found someone who would make you feel smart. And it's a joke. And and if your investors had any idea that you were up to this with their money, but can you imagine partnering with someone who was a little under you intellectually? Could you see that? And so I run programs on letting go of your narrative, which puts you right here in that you stop being so vigilant for your kavod. You stop being so vigilant for your own ego. And so suddenly, like, the brain starts networking and you're, like, tasting apples. And, like, because our brains are so busy protecting ourselves that we lose out on the experience of life, which is really the goal. The whole goal of the seminar is to get yourself back into life. Being vibrationally clean is pretty good, too. Very good for business and health and stuff like that. Anyway, it's quite miraculous I'm holding these. I'm only holding them because I was such a nice man that I went and picked up my amazing wife at Osherad to help her with the shopping. And it turned out the printer was right there. And they handed me this on my way there. Send this out to men, just take them pass. Take one and pass. Anyway, but for those listening to this, I have Thursday night's going to be in Dushinsky with a cholent, a meaty cholent, not one of those lame cholents. Yeah, Thursday night will be in Dushinsky at 9 p.m. It's on Shmuel Navi Street, 52. That's an introduction to Sunday's seminar, which is men's. And in America, I have coming up in Brooklyn the 16th of February for men, with an intro on the 13th, which is a Thursday. And then the following week, I have an intro in Muncie on Thursday, with a seminar starting for men on the 23rd. And the women, so my only women's seminar in a long time, is going to be in Muncie on the 24th. It'll be a women's seminar in Muncie. So please join me for that. You will not be sorry. And whatever reason you think you may not be able to come, that you got to speak to me privately, don't bother. I will convince you. So just come. Save me the conversation. Just kidding. If you really think you need to break through something to get there, I will help you break through. But just know that I will help you break through. So you might as well come anyway. Okay. So the other word is religion. And we are not just some narrative, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, my dear children. We are not just some random narrative, like all those other conflicting narratives of all these religions out there. That's not who we are. And so therefore you want to knock out the word religious as well. Get rid of the word religious, and from now on, just say you're observant. Yeah? Everyone try the word observant?
Observant.
Try it together. Observant.
Observant.
And what's cool about observant doesn't mean you're observant of everything. Because, like, how could you? According to the Chafetz Chaim, if you keep Shabbat, but have never learned all the laws, ready for this, and you're constantly reviewing them, he says, inevitably you're doing something wrong on Shabbos. So, like, we're really just observant, and we're doing our best to be observant. None of us are really perfect. We make a lot of mistakes. That's one of the reasons why we're involved in learning and review. It's because we're not there. Religious sounds like you're there. Observant means that what you know, you observe. What you know, you do. Yeah, not that we don't fall here and there. People fall. But what you do, what you know, you do. Okay, it's been a pleasure. I'm so happy to be back in Eretz Yisrael, and I'm here, Baruch Hashem, for the next month. So excited for some great classes. Shalom, everybody. Shalom. If you enjoyed watching this, well, watch some more. Send it, click it, forward it, join it, subscribe to it. You know, keep coming on and joining me in this amazing movement to make a big difference in the world. And the biggest thing you can do of all is to join the YomTovMediaClub.com. Please go online, YomTovMediaClub.com.